Evening, everybody. Welcome to our exploration of Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just, finding your own path, finding your path. I think this is 36. So we're going to carry on. Mirz Hashem, Anfechil Hashem. We're in the Midah of Nikiyut, excuse me, of cleanliness. But before I start tonight, I want to say a special thank you to our resident cinematographer, videographer, Moshe Michael, who unfortunately is departing back to foreign shores, to the United States of America. We want to give him a big bracha. He had a lot of hatzlacha there, and he should come back very soon and bring Mashiach with you. And want to give him a big thank you for all the help and that he's given to us to bring these shirim to you. Anfechil Hashem. Gam kein heim rabim ugedolim. The branches of Chil Hashem. Chil Hashem means the desecration of Hashem's name. I think we spoke about this in previous weeks. I think I mentioned that it's possible to be Mechal Shem Shemaim even in private. I think I mentioned that last week. I'm not going to go into that again. Ayin Sham. But there are many, of course we're talking about Nikius, and Nikius is to track down and to identify and to deal with all of the branches of a bad midah or an aveira. And the first thing you have to do is to recognize them, because as the midah of Nikius is dealing with things which are subtle, which we're going to see tonight, a lot of the times people don't really think that's considered to be part of Chil Hashem or part of whatever it might be, Geneva, as we've seen before, or all of the aveiras have these subtle little byways which kind of get ignored unless a person spends time in examining his actions, which is what Mesilas Yesharim is all about. They are many and they are great. Ki harbi tzarich ha'adam lios chas al kavod koino b'chol ma sheyaseh tzarich sheyistakel v'yizboinen ma'od shelo yetzim mishom ma sheyuchal lios chilul chavod shemaim chas v'chalila. Let's translate. So the branches of Chil Hashem, as we said, are many and they're great, and a person needs to try very hard, to work very hard, to be chas al kavod, to have pity literally on the honor of his creator, to be careful that the name of Hashem is protected and is not through his actions brought into any kind of disrepute. Everything that a person does, he needs to look at it, to analyze it, not just for what it is, but what it looks like. Check it out, check it over, analyze it very much, that there shouldn't come out from this action anything that would be in any way a desecration of God's name. Chas v'chalila. It already said, we already know the Mishnah and Avos, Perek Daled, Ukava Shanino, as it already said, Echad shogeg ve'echad mezid b'chil Hashem. There's no difference between a willful desecration of God's name, God forbid, or an inadvertent Chil Hashem. It's a very, in this sense, Chil Hashem is extremely exacting. Because if Hashem's name, for any reason, God forbid, is desecrated by what a person does, at the end of the day, even though one could say that he's less guilty for something which is shogeg than one could ask the question, well, how can something which is deliberate, mazid, and something which is inadvertent, shogeg, be the same? So the answer is, I think I'm right in saying it's not a question of how responsible a person is. Clearly a person is more responsible for something which is deliberate than something which is inadvertent, shogeg, as we see in Chil Shabbos. A person who is deliberately Mechal Shabbos, with hasra, with warning, etc., etc., it's chayiv misa. A person who does is Mechal Shabbos for shogeg has to bring a korban. So I think what we're saying here is that the effect of Chil Hashem really doesn't matter if it's deliberate or inadvertent. From the outside, from somebody observing, this is an Orthodox Jew, and we're going to see it's, of course, all according to the status and the level and the perception of the viewer. There really is no difference. If this looks like a desecration of God's name, then it's a desecration of God's name. And the intention or the inattention, the lack of deliberateness is really immaterial when it comes to the effect of the Chillul Hashem. I think that's what he means. Frommer Chazal say, Heichi domi Chillul Hashem. What is Chillul Hashem? Could we describe Chillul Hashem? Omar Rav, the Yamora Rav said, Kagon Ona, for example, me. Teshakilna b'sra v'lo yihavna t'mei la'alta. If I were to go to the store and buy something on credit, this would be on my level a Chillul Hashem. Somebody on Rav's level, if he goes to buy meat, he has to pay for it immediately. Because that's on his level something even as seemingly innocuous as taking credit. This is not something which is appropriate on his level for an Amoira. Or Rabbi Yochanan said, could go Nana, for example, what would be Chillul Hashem for somebody on my level? The Masgina Arba Amos below Torah u below Tefillin. If I were to go 4 Amos without wearing my Tefillin and without learning Torah or being involved in Torah, I guess, how can a person tell? Maybe because they see that you're involved in something which is not Torah, which is you're talking about something else maybe. On the level of Rabbi Yochanan, that's already called the Chillul Hashem. And as we said before, Vayine shekol adam lefi madrigoso lefi ma shehu nechshav be'einei hador. The matter at hand is that every single person, according to his level, and according to, and this is really what I was saying before, how he is viewed from the outside by the eyes of that generation. Tzorech sheis boinein levilti asois davar bilti hagun leish kamohu. So he has to check, he has to ensure that it shouldn't be that he should do anything which is considered inappropriate for somebody of his stature. Ki chavi rabbos chashivusoi v'chachmoso kein roi shiyarbe v'zirusoi b'divrei ha'avoida v'diktuk bo. Because corresponding to a person's importance and his wisdom, similarly it's fitting that he should increase his vigilance in matters of his avodas Hashem and his precision in his avodas Hashem, the way he does mitzvahs. Somebody, let's say, comes out of the bathroom and he says Asher Yotza. It's not appropriate for a Talmid Chacham to be walking around or to looking at his watch or doing anything else while saying a bracha. Maybe on somebody who's, on a lower level, okay. I mean, even if we were to say that, but the greater a person is, the more he's valued, the higher he's esteemed. As I like to say, there's no privilege without responsibility. The more privileged the person is, the more Hashem blesses him with wisdom, the more he's considered to be somebody significant and important in the public world, the more he has to exemplify what that status has given him. The more careful he has to be. Excuse me. Ki Kovod Torah hu shemisha marbe chil halimud bo yarbe kamo kain biyosha uvasikon amidus. The more a person learns, the more he knows, the more of a Talmid Chacham he is. So concomitantly, the more he has to increase in his straightness, his yashrus, and the fixing of his midos. He has to improve his character traits, correspondingly to the level of his Torah. For call me, sheyechsam is anybody who's lacking in this, the mishamarbe, belimud, and this person now has learned a lot, but he hasn't looked after the other part. So gorem bizoyon lelimud atzmo. He causes a disgrace to the learning itself. People say, well, that's somebody who learns Torah. Chas v'chalila, chilul shmo. That's called a chilul Hashem. That's a desecration of God's name, Yisborach. Shenosan lanu es Torah HaKadosha, that He's given us the Torah, which is something which is holy. And if we don't exemplify that holiness, in spite of the fact that we've learned such a holy thing as the Torah, then that, of course, as he said before, causes a disgrace to the Torah itself. But tzivonu la'asok bo, Hashem commanded us to involve ourselves in the Torah. Lahasig al yoda shleimusenu, to, by doing this, by learning the Torah, to reach our perfection. The Torah is a kli chemda. It's a desirable tool. It's a tool which is being given to us, which is supposed to fix us. And a person who doesn't use the Torah to improve himself and to take the lessons of the Torah and the wisdom of the Torah and change himself into a better, a more elevated, a less physical, a more spiritual, a more trustworthy, a straighter, a holier person, any lacking in that is a chilul Hashem. I just want to tell you two personal stories. I remember the first time when I was in New York City, and I was going to shul every morning, but I was still in the world of not wearing a kippah out in the street. And one day I decided, I'd just finished davening down on the, it was East, I think 29th Street between Lexington and 3rd, somewhere around there. There's a shul called Adereth El. I'm trying to remember the name of the rabbi. He now passed away. He was a lovely fellow. Come to me maybe in a second. So I decided after Shachris one morning that it was about time that I would wear a kippah out in public. So I went down to the nearest Jewish bookshop, and I walked in. I saw down at the end of the counter there was this great carousel with all kinds of Jewish headgear. You know, there were white ones and black ones, and ones that looked like they come off the head of an Afghan sheep herd. There was, I just walked up to this carousel, sort of spun it round, and without thinking too much about it, I picked up this big black couple and, dropped it on my head, walked out, paid for it, walked out in the street, and everything had changed. I realized I'd become an ambassador. I'm now an ambassador for the Jewish people and for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now everything that I do will be seen through the lens of the fact that I'm an Orthodox, or I look like an Orthodox Jew. And if I go, I don't know, if I'm in line at the 7-Eleven or wherever it is, or the Ralph's supermarket, and I think they have Ralph's in California, not in New York. But anyway, in the line in the supermarket, and like I push in line or do something, so it won't be who's this guy pushing in line. It's going to be who's this Jew pushing in line. Or if you go onto the subway and you give up your seat to some old lady, then you'll be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim. The good name of the Ribbono Shel Olam and the Jewish people and the Torah rests precariously on a little piece of cloth on the top of our heads. Another story. For many years I didn't drive here in Eretz Yisrael. And I got a car. And the last time I'd driven the car, probably in my 20s, I think. Maybe a bit. But anyway, I got behind the wheel of this car, and I was a 20-year-old again. And I was driving like a 20-year-old. And I suddenly kind of saw somebody looking at me, and I realized that I can't drive like that. So I made myself a little sign, and I put it over the speedometer, next to the speedometer. And I said, it said, "You look like a rabbi. Are you driving like one?" So, again, the way you look is the way you have to behave. And even if to you, maybe inside you, there's this 22-year-old, sports car fanatic who wants to drive like Sterling Moss or Fangio, I don't know who the racing car guys are nowadays, but I'm sorry, maybe inside that's the way you feel, the way you look at yourself. But once you become a Talmid Chacham, once you become a Ben Torah, once you even look like a Talmid Chacham or a Ben Torah, you've got to behave like that because you're an ambassador. Okay, that is the section on Chilul Hashem. I do apologize for my voice tonight. We're now going to talk about Shabbos. Shabbos, Shmira Shabbos, v'yomim tovim, Rabba hi. It's an essential, one of the pinnacles, one of the primary, the three biggies, Shabbos, Kashrus, and Taras Mishpacha. The three things that people understand are the bases of Jewish life. Shabbos, if you ask, I think almost every Baal Tshuva, what attracted them to Yiddishkeit, my experience is that almost everybody I ever asked said Shabbos. Shabbos has a power which is unlike any of the other mitzvahs. It could be because it's me'ein olam haba. It's something which allows you a peek. The Gemara says that one of the things which is a 60th of olam haba, echad mishishim, 1 to 59, of the world to come, is Shabbos. Pnei Shabbos. The pnei, the panim of somebody, the face reveals the inside, the pnim, panim, pnim, interior, inside is pnim. So the panim, the face of Shabbos, reveals something which is out of this world. It's me'ein olam haba. And it's something that draws people, draws the neshama, draws that pintaliyid, that little Jewish spark, that anybody who finds them sitting at a Shabbos table understands that that's the reason. They maybe don't understand it, but that's why they're there. And Shabbos has many, many, many details. The Chofetz Chaim said that somebody who's not constantly involved in learning Shmira Shabbos will almost certainly, I think he says certainly, I don't remember, break one of the laws. Hilchasa Rabsa l'Shabsa. It's a great, Shabbos has many halachas, great halachas. And v'hafilu divrei shvus, even what we call the derabbanans, afal pi, shemid divrei chachamim heim, even though they are divrei chachamim, they may be rabbinic. People say, well, it's only a derabbanan. Ikarim heim, they are ikarim. Now, I'd like to suggest the reason why they are ikarim is that Shabbos is something that a person can experience by a series of physical actions. These are called the malachas, which we desist from, and the mitzvahs assays that we involve ourselves in. Not doing malacha, not turning on lights, not driving, all the 39 malachas and all their tolos. And also the part of the Rabbanans enhance, in that sense they are as important. They are ikarim because they all lead the person to be able to unlock within himself this feeling, this kedusha, this connection. And so in a sense, even though it's true they're rabbinic, and some of them, many of them are gedorim, they are fences to prevent a person transgressing a mitzvah d'oraisa. Often people say, well, why did the Rabbanan, don't we have enough restrictions? The Rabbanan have to come along and, make more things. And one of the halachas is a person not supposed to ride a horse on Shabbos. Why? Because he might ride along and he might decide he needs something to goad the animal along with, and he'll ride up to a tree and he'll break off a branch, and that'll be an issa d'oraisa of tolush. So because of that somewhat remote possibility, Chazal were goizer, they decreed that you can't ride a horse, even though riding the horse in itself is not in any form, is not provided whatever, you're in the tchum, but there's no issa d'oraisa to ride a horse. I think the point is being missed. First of all, I want to just say something before I go into the main point, something that Rabbi Leff said, that he gives a moshel, or Zev Leff, he gave a moshel, beautiful moshel idea of a group of people, a village, let's say, on the top of a very high mountain. And this mountain was somewhat unique, is that on every side there was a sheer precipice of about 1,000 meters. So they decide, of course, that when they start to live there, that they need a fence to make sure that people don't fall off the cliff, blunder their way to the edge of the cliff and fall off. So one opinion was they should build a fence around the perimeter, maximize the area of the village, and some bright spark came along and said, no, that's not a very good idea, because if there's a break in that fence, then that's it. You've no zero, no, what's it called, no tolerance, no area of nothing to defend you from falling off the cliff. I think, he said, we should build that fence way back in. We should build that fence at least 100 feet back from the edge of the cliff. So God forbid, if that fence does get broken, a person's still got a long way before they fall to his death. And the same thing with Shabbos. Even though the rabbinic decrees sometimes seem to be us rather far-fetched or unnecessarily stringent, but if you look at the severity of Shabbos and what it means to break a Shabbos, Issa D'Oraisa on Shabbos, you should be very happy that the Rabbanon made it that even if, God forbid, you break through that fence, you're still a goodly distance from actually falling off the cliff. A beautiful marshal. But I think there's another idea to the Rabbanans, which is what I think he's talking about, the Yesharim Heim. I'd like to tell you two stories. One story was when I was living in the old city, and I just started learning. And I first started to understand what Gemara was. So suddenly my eyes started to open. There was this one little piece of Gemara that I was learning, which I understood. And I was invited to eat, I think it was somewhere in Ma'alot Daphna. I was living in the old city. And on my way back from the meal, I walked through Yesharim. And of course, anybody who's walked through Yesharim on a Friday night knows that that's Ma'ain Olam Haba in itself. And pretty much every single shul, and there are a lot of them, I went in there and I opened up the Gemara and learned the same piece of Gemara all the way home. And I had this tremendous, I don't know if I ever had another feeling, that feeling of Oneg Shabbos, the pleasure. Anybody who's kept Shabbos properly knows what that feeling is. It's true, it doesn't always happen. You know, very often, Baruch Hashem, when you have kids and grandkids, and you know, the Shabbos table can get a bit raucous, and not always things go according to plan. But anybody who's had that experience knows what I'm talking about. I remember Rabbi Leib Kellerman once described a very interesting idea. You know, people often say, and they said about learning as well, so, Shabbos, I don't know, you know, you can't do this and you can't do that. I mean, and it's so long, you know, in the summer. Why is it that some people love Shabbos and other people find it very burdensome? So he gave a beautiful idea. Shabbos is a bria. Shabbos is a creation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Shabbos. Shabbos is a creation. Shabbos is a bria, and Shabbos has feelings. And Kaviyachol, Shabbos takes a walk down the high street on Erev Shabbos, and Shabbos looks into the door of somebody's home, and if Shabbos sees that the table is set and people are waiting expectantly, then Shabbos goes and spends Shabbos with them, and they have a feeling of Shabbos. But if a person's, you know, like rushing around, here we go, let's throw some challahs on the table, you know, goes, you know, some dips from the local deli and digs out some gefilte fish from the deep freeze and manages to just get it into an edible state by the time the candles are lit. So Shabbos takes a peek round the door and says, not going to spend Shabbos here this week. And off he goes, she goes. Shabbos is a feminine noun. So I think that's what I would like to add to this, that the Rabbanans, the Divrei Chachamim, Yesharim Heim, because everything is to create, is to unlock in a person's neshama this chibur, this connection to something which is Me'ain Olam Haba. Okay, V'chein amru la'olam al tiyeh shvus kala be'inecho. Similarly, it says in Chagiga, a shvus, a rabbinic decree should be light in our eyes. Shaharei smicha shavus hi, because smicha, whether you can lean on a horse or not on Shabbos, it's a shvus. V'nechleku bo gedolei hador, and great rabbis. Who are they? It says here in the notes, Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer, Yossi ben Yochanan, Shua ben Prachia, V'nita Abeli, Yehuda ben Tabai, V'Shimon ben Shetach, Shemaiah v'Avtalion, Shammai v'Hillel. All of these great rabbis argued about whether you can lean on a horse on Shabbos. People of this stature, if it's that important to them, it should be that important to us. V'ulam prati ha'dinim l'machlokosam b'vorim heim etzel ha'poskim b'sifreihem. So all of the pratim, the details of Shabbos, are expounded or explained for us in the works of the Achronim and down to this day, Shmir Shabbos, etc. V'chulam shavim la'chovaseinu. They're all equal, he's saying, as far as our obligation to observe them. Ula zehirus hamitztorech, and the necessary care when approaching Shabbos, whether it's the D'Oraisa or the Rabbanon. Umara shekasha al hahaman shmirosa. Those things, there are some, he's talking of course to a religious audience. And what's difficult for a religious person on Shabbos? Doesn't think about driving the car, doesn't think about turning on the light. What's difficult on Shabbos? Hashivosa ela esek is talking about, Hashivosa, refraining from business, from not talking about business. Medaber b'masam matonom, speaking about their worldly affairs, their business dealings. This people find difficult on Shabbos. And even, of course, it's not D'Oraisa. And even though this actually is not the Rabbon, it's Medivrei Sofrim, it's from the Nevi'im, it's from Yeshaya, Nun Ches. As it says, V'chibadatoi me'asos d'roachecha mimtzo chefzecha v'daber davar. Daber davar means a person should refrain from secular talk on Shabbos, talking about things which are to do with the daily life of the week. And those are things which are difficult to do. And that's when we talk about, again, this is the whole idea of Nikias. When a person wants to be Noki, he should try as much as possible to keep his focus on Divrei Torah, Divrei Kedusha, and not be involved. Not let his speech wander to politics, to daily affairs. Now, it could be, I mean, of course, everything has to be appropriate for the Shabbos table that you're at. It could be that if you're a Shabbos table where you're doing Kiruv, and people are not going to be able to enjoy a diet of pure Divrei Torah, especially if the Divrei Torah require understanding psukim and diukim v'chule v'chule. And it may be that a person, people are going to start talking about Trump's first, whatever it is, week in office. But if you're clever, you can always find a way of taking out a Torah lesson even from current events. And then, in a sense, that becomes Divrei Torah. It becomes something which is focused on the Kedusha of Shabbos, rather than just speaking about politics. So, Shekol Masha Osa, so that's as he says, the Klalhu. The general principle is that Shekol Masha Osa b'Shabbos Laso, so anything which is prohibited on Shabbos, to actually do that action. Osa Lishtadel Ba'avuro. So it's forbidden to make efforts in that direction. And we're going to see what that means. Or la haskiro b'fiv, or to mention it verbally. Ulechein osru la yayin b'nechosov. Therefore, a person not allowed to go and examine his business dealings or his properties, to walk around his factory, to liros ma tzorech lemocha, to check out what's needed for tomorrow. O leilech lefesach hamidina, or go to the edge of the tchum, past which he can't travel on Shabbos. Lo seis b'layla meheira lemrachok, because he has to travel a long distance, and therefore, of course, there are ways to do this, but The general principle is that a person can't travel out and say, I'm going right now to the edge of the border so I can be ready to launch myself off on the train on Motzi Shabbos. V'asalom is forbidden to say, Devar ploni e'eseh l'macha. I'm going to go to the bank tomorrow. I'm going to fix the car tomorrow. I'm going to take the car in for an oil change tomorrow. Or sechara poloni ekneh macha. Or, I saw a very good shares in, I'm going to buy these new Chinese AI investments tomorrow. All of these things are osad d'Rabbanan because they are pogea in Shabbos. They wound Shabbos. V'chein kol hayotze b'zeh. Okay, I'm going to pause here. That's the end of his section on Shabbos. And the next thing we're going to move on to is a section about midot. Up to now we've been talking about actions. Now we're going to be talking about character traits. And of course character traits are more difficult to deal with. And there's something that require a lot of effort, more effort in a way than physical actions. A person has much more control over his physical actions than on his feelings or his character traits. His character traits are deep within him. They really are part of who a person is. But Bezrat Hashem, next week we'll carry on and we'll try and examine those. All the best.